Welcome back to Prayer Together. My name is Craig, and thank you for joining us on week 4. Last week, we talked about when prayer feels hard, and we shared some hard things that we're facing in our lives. Now, my challenge for you this week is to take that teaching even deeper in your group. Really open up with one another and share things that you might be tempted just to keep secret. The best thing that you can do to encourage honesty in your group is just be honest yourself. Your group may not have the kind of trust and safety that gets built up in groups who've spent years together, but I still encourage you to share as vulnerably as you can. Now, don't take 3 steps past what feels comfortable, but at least take 1 step. Ask for prayer in an area of your life where you're genuinely struggling and a little embarrassed to admit. And if you're in a mixed gender group, we often recommend that men and women subgroup from time to time to increase that sense of safety. Ultimately, community means letting go of the myth that everyone needs to appear perfect. It also means just being genuine in your responses to the questions as they come up. When people share personal things like this, the group's response is crucial. If someone feels like there's a chance that they might be judged, then there is no way that they'll open up. So avoid snap judgments, avoid giving quick fixes or easy answers. Instead, express empathy to them. Be gentle and sincere. Look them in the eye. Your group should be a safe place to tell the truth no matter what. Anything shared in the group stays in the group. Nobody discusses anything outside the group for any reason, except in rare cases where serious harm could come upon someone. So if group members ask for advice, make sure that any counsel that you give starts with humility and is heartfelt. Provide them with some things to consider, but just trust that ultimately they're the ones who have to weigh those decisions for themselves. A great rule of thumb also is to be sure that you're always asking for more advice from others than you're giving out yourself. Most of all, when these heartfelt moments arise, just be laser focused on staying closely connected to God. Often you will not know what to say on your own, but God will guide you. And so keep one ear tuned towards the person and then the other towards heaven, and you're likely to get it just about right. And then that God-centered way of life is exactly what we're exploring in today's session. So let's take out a guide and a pen as Bill Hybels teaches us how to become people of prayer.
If you had a doctor's appointment today and learned that you needed emergency surgery, who would you call to pray on your behalf? Who comes to mind as being such a person of prayer that you would contact them immediately and ask them to intercede on your behalf? My guess is that a few names are coming to your mind right now. Names of people that you know walk with God closely and are trustworthy. People who pray deeply and regularly. I know exactly who I would call. People of prayer believe both in the nearness of God and the immensity of God. They believe that He cares and that He has infinite power at His fingertips. And there's something else you need to know about people of prayer. They didn't simply drift into that condition. They didn't wake up one morning and discover that they fit that description. Somewhere during the course of their life, they became so convinced of the power of prayer that they decided to become people of prayer. Something else you should know about these people is that a high percentage of them employ a whole series of daily practices or rituals that keep them in prayer mode all throughout the day. I know people who roll out of bed in the morning in such a way that the first thing that hits the floor is their knees. Now, consult your physician before you try this, but trust me, it can be done. This little practice reminds those who employ it that from the very outset of the day, God is going to be at the center of things, and communicating with Him is the first priority of the day. I know people of prayer who, when they sit down with a cup of coffee and a newspaper early in the morning, they don't just read the paper like most people do, they pray through the paper. Really. Instead of just taking in the information in the paper, they take the concerns that they read about in the paper to God in prayer. They pray about the famines, the hurricane victims, the people being oppressed by tyrants and drug lords. I know people of prayer who set the alarm on their watch or cell phone to go off at the top of every hour as a reminder to pray to God at least every 60 minutes. I know people of prayer who ride commuter trains to work and back each day and devote the entire commute, both ways, to prayer. I know people of prayer who, upon arriving at their office and seeing their meeting schedule for their day, they pick it up and they pray through it, meeting by meeting by meeting. And they ask God to give them wisdom and grace for every meeting of the day. I know people of prayer who schedule one full lunch hour per week to be done in total solitude so that they can be alone with God and use that lunch hour to journal and pray and listen to God. I know people of prayer who have key prayer verses as their screensavers and then change them out every few weeks just to keep challenging themselves to pray. I know people who keep a special watch out for physically or mentally disabled people or homeless people and pray for them every single time they cross their path. I know people who tape prayer concerns on their refrigerator door so that every time they open the door for food or drink, they're reminded of the needs of people that they promised to pray for. Of course, we all know people who pray at meal times, but I know lots of committed prayers who remember those without food at every single meal table that they sit down at. I know people of prayer who, when they watch the evening network news on TV, have their prayer journals right next to them so that they can keep track of trouble spots in the world and pray for them. I know parents who not only pray for each of their children when they put them to bed, but who go to great lengths to teach their children to pray. Now, this can be challenging after long days of work, but these parents know the value of teaching kids to pray early on in life, so they make that investment. I know lots of people committed to prayer who make sure that in the final waking moments of their day, they say, "Thanks, God. Thanks for accompanying me all throughout the course of my day." And I know people whose final words each night are simply, "Good night, God. Let's do it again tomorrow." Do these people sound a little odd to you? Do these little rituals seem silly or maybe a little beneath you? Do you wonder why intelligent, rational, well-adjusted people engage in them? I can tell you why. People of prayer know full well how easy it is to go days or even weeks without speaking to or hearing from God. They've done it, and they don't like it. In fact, they dislike it so much that they're willing to think through and implement dozens of these little practices so that they're mindful of God's presence and power all throughout the course of their regular days. Jesus himself was not above some of these rituals. We know from the scriptures that Jesus had favorite places that he would go to pray. He loved praying in the mountains, and he loved praying down by the seashore. We know Jesus had favorite people to pray with. He would pray with the crowds, he would pray with the 12, but if he was really getting down to business, he would take Peter, James, and John with him. We see Jesus retreating for intensive times of prayer before he made major life decisions. I myself have employed lots of these little rituals to help me stay prayerful. I'll mention just two of mine. I do quite a bit of speaking away from our church, which winds me up in hotel rooms more often than I wish. And I've developed this little ritual that's very meaningful to me. The last thing I do before I leave a hotel room to go out and speak somewhere is I kneel by the hotel bed and I ask God to invigorate my teaching gift, I ask Him to pour favor on my life and so that I can be just a servant in His hands when I speak somewhere. The first thing I do when I come back from wherever I was speaking and I walk into that same hotel room, I don't turn the TV on, I don't do anything else. I walk to the exact same spot by the bed and I get back down on my knees and I give Him thanksgiving for however He used me. And that little practice has become inviolable in my life. In fact, before I came to this taping right now, I did the same thing at my bedside in the cottage just up the hill. The other little ritual that I'll mention to you sounds certifiably strange unless you kind of understand the context. Maybe 15 years or so ago, I got deeply convicted by God to have concern for all the churches on planet Earth and not just the one that I pastor. And this was deeply imprinted on me by the Holy Spirit. And so I decided to build that capacity, to build that sense of concern for churches other than mine, that I would pray a prayer every single time I saw a church building. So when I'm driving anywhere and I look on the side of the road and I see a Baptist church or a Catholic church, doesn't matter. I stop thinking about whatever else I'm thinking about and I kind of shoot a prayer. I say, God, may that church prevail. I don't know its pastor. I don't know the condition of whatever's going on in that church, but it's your church. It's what Jesus is all about in this world. And so I shoot prayers at every single church I see. Sometimes when I'm on final approach on an airplane coming into a city, I'll see 4 or 5 different churches kind of from the top. I'll see the cross or the steeple or whatever. And I pray, I really believe that the local church is the hope of the world. So why wouldn't I pray for every single church to prevail? Gang, the driving reason I wanted to put this curriculum together was to help as many people as I possibly could to become people of prayer. Imagine what would happen in our world if the more than 1 billion of us who call ourselves Christ followers were really all people of prayer. Can you imagine the impact that could have on our broken world? All the wrongs that could be righted? All the conflicts that would come to an end? A bit closer to home, a carpenter friend of mine who makes a handsome living building homes for affluent people became a person of prayer a few years back. He learned not only how to communicate with God, but how to listen to God's voice and how to discern God's whispers. One day he was doing a small project at my house, and when he was done, I walked him out to his truck. As he was taking his tool belt off, he said, "Bill, God spoke to me about something recently." I said, "Really? What did he say?" He said, "God told me to look at my hands," which sounded a little odd, but I did it. And as I looked at my hands, he said to me, "You've used these hands, these very skilled hands, to build homes for wealthy people, which is fine. But from here on out, at least once a year, I want you to use those hands to build homes for the poor." And this carpenter friend of mine went on to tell me about how he hooked up with Habitat for Humanity, and he spent 2 weeks every year building homes in under-resourced areas here in the U.S. and all around the world. And he told me how he's having the time of his life doing this. This all came about because he became a person of prayer, someone who talks and listens to God. You can become this kind of person. You can. You don't need to go to seminary to become this kind of person. You don't have to be older or younger, richer or skinnier to become this kind of person. You simply need to become intentional to become a person of prayer. You might start by turning over your hands to God right now and saying, "God, I really do want to become a person of prayer. I want the first thought of my day to be about you, and the last thought of my day to be about you, and all the time in between, I want to be mindful of your power and presence. I want to be the kind of person who keeps a running dialogue with you all throughout the course of my day. I want my hands to be lifted to you in worship. I want my hands to be put to practical use on fixing what is broken in this world. Anybody interested in that kind of life? Anybody interested in having those kinds of hands?
So here are my hands. They're small and here are my hands. They're small and trembling. Here are my arms. They're weak, but here are my arms. They're weak but willing. Here are my eyes. They burn with memories. Here are my eyes. They're tears.